Well, good evening at 7 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West, held in Council Chambers at 216 Main Street West, Swan River, Manitoba, this 14th day, Valentine's Day of February 2023 at 7 p.m. Present this evening, myself, Reeve Gade, Deputy Reeve Brian Burick here, Councillor Carrie Blosha, Councillor Terry Neely, Councillor Byron Kushniryk, and Councillor Raymond McGregor. Councillor Zbirun is unable to join us tonight. Also in the room we have our interim CIO Pat Ellingson and our videographer Jeremy Bergen. We will start this evening with a notice of absence. We're at 1.2 on the agenda. Be resolved the notice of absence submitted by Councillor Zbirun regarding the regular meeting of Council held this 14th day of February 2023 shall be accepted as received. Is there a mover, please? Councillor Blosha, a seconder. Councillor Neely. Any discussion on the resolution? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Number 2, we'll adopt the agenda this evening. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of Council held this 14th day of February 2023 shall be adopted as presented. A mover, please. Councillor Burick, a seconder. Councillor Kushniryk. Any discussion, changes to the agenda anyone's looking for tonight? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We will go to section 3. We'll adopt minutes. So in your Allnet, you'll have a copy of the minutes there to review. Be resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on January 24th, 2023 be adopted as presented. A mover, please. Councillor Kushniryk. Someone to second the resolution. Councillor, I'll take Mr. McGregor, because he rarely gets his hand up in time. Discussion on the minutes. Does anyone see any errors or omissions or anything else we need to talk about with those? Has everybody had a chance? Do you want another minute? We're all good. We'll call the question then. Those in favor? That is carried. Public Works report isn't scheduled until 7:15, but would you mind if we move you up to now?
Yeah, it's fine.
Come join us. We brought you a cupcake.
Bring up the child.
Yeah, come have a
It is
minute.
the bigger one there, Bill.
So our lead hand, White Hugh is here tonight, and there is in your Allnet copy of the notes he's speaking from tonight, if that helps anybody to follow along, but I think he's going to go over all that with us as well.
Yep. Good evening. So, it's been a while, but so the report that we have for February is we've taken the Christmas lights down in Manitoba. There was a flag pole that we'd taken down, the flag. The rings that hold the flag apart separated, so we took that down. We've been hauling some sand from the cold storage in Swan to Benito, just to have extra sand there. We've also sanded the hill beside the Mennonite Cemetery. We've done that. There's a lot of grain hauling going on there, and some of the ratepayers had asked if we could sand that. Along with the S-curve down by Staples, Darren Staples. We've sanded that. We used to sand it a few years back. We had a lot of compliments on that, and again we were asked to do it, so we put some sand down there as well. We had an air breather coat on the Cat 140 came up while Chad was grading. It just frosted up in the snow dust inside, so we ran into Durban and grabbed another air filter, took it out and changed it out on the road. We ordered a couple more, just that way if the filter's wet we can change the filter out and let the other one dry and we're good to go. We had an issue with the door in the Durban shop not closing that day. I'm thinking what's happening is there's a weather strip on the bottom of the door and there's a lot of moisture getting in and the sensors are getting fogged over, so it wouldn't close the door. So we need to look at replacing that weather stripping to stop that issue. We also had an issue with the Swan River shop. We had valley doors in there. They looked at the door. They were coming back, I believe it was this afternoon, to do a little bit of readjusting. They put new rollers in, and it was just binding, so it was hard for it to go up. So hopefully that was addressed and it should be good. I think everybody's aware that the wells by Nutrien Ag are up and running. The mice had a condo unit built in the panel box. It was pretty bad in there, so it was a relay that wasn't sending a message to the wells to power on. So that issue was resolved. We had diesel electric out to the water treatment plant. Every once in a while there's an issue with the chemical feeders. They don't get power to turn on. So we had them out. We have a temporary fix on that right now. We have Blaine that's looking into it to see what other route we can go. It's on a flow switch right now. So we're looking to see if we can eliminate that flow switch and do something different there so we don't have any more issues with that. Tandem was brought into Swan for a bath and cleanup, so it's looking a lot better. The trailer from the Durban landfill was brought to the Durban shop, so all that with the paint and everything is in the shop yard now. Gerard Metals picked up the metal pile in Benito, so I'm gonna see if maybe Chris can come in there now where they all chewed it up and with the grader and just kind of push all that back so people can dump in there and it's not right out on the road. We had the grader in Benito to plow the streets. After we did that, we kind of pushed everything off to the side. Chris came in with the tandem and we removed all the piles off the streets and some of the corners where they were building up pretty high for the stop signs. So we got those piles taken away, and a lot of the ladies with the smaller cars, a lot of compliments. They're really happy. Stop sign by the office was knocked down. The stop sign is in the old fire hall behind the office. I did speak to Kelly yesterday. They are supposed to be coming in either today or it was supposed to be today or tomorrow. If not, we'll see what we can do for a temporary sign right now, just to put it up. But they are aware of it and they confirmed that they will be in to put it back up for us. They're just a little bit behind on everything. The tires were changed on the John Deere 5525. It's a lot nicer. You can actually go around corners without sliding now, so it was good. The 3-ton was taken to Grazier's, so the box is all repaired. Initially, we had where the box was rusted on the side there. One of the supports was rusted out as well, the brace, so they repaired that. Everything's good, tarp's back, everything's operational now. Implement tires and rims were picked up from Cal Tire, so 2 of them were dropped off in Swan River shop for spares for the grader and 1 in Durban. We dropped 1 of the rims off. It took a little bit of damage. Back at Cal Tire, they're going to put a new rim on it, so we'll have a spare. The one way for Ralph's grader, we had a pin that broke for his tire, and it actually fell off. It went into the ditch, so we went and got it out. We ordered the parts. The parts are in now, so that's the plan for tomorrow morning, is to put that the tire back on the one way and have it operational. So he's been running without it, and there's a little bit of bounce with that. It's breaking the chain, so that'll get rid of that problem. Blades for the graders were delivered to Swan. Chris had ordered some. He's still waiting on his delivery. He said he was going to look into that to see where his blades are. So once we know, then be on the next report when they're back in Durban. Peak Performance came and cleaned the snow off the Swan River shop. It was leaking inside the shop right by the door, so there's a little electrical there, there's light switches and everything, so they came in and cleaned it off, hauled the snow away. We had a slow leak on the front tire on the 7330, so when Cal Tire was out doing the tires on the 5525, we just had them fix that issue, so it's all good. Speaking with Dawn today, the 870 that's at Timrick's could be done as early as beginning of next week. There was talk about the clutch packs in there, as I understand they're going to be replaced. They said the best one in there was 58% worn, so it's good, should be good now. The plow is all done and ready to go with Swan River scrap metal, so once the grader is done, then we'll run it over and pick up the plow. The shop and shop yard in Swan is scheduled for a cleanup, so we're going to move some snow and do some organizing, get inventory on culverts and that. Truck and trailer safeties need to be looked at, so it's something that we're going to look at and see when the safeties are due and get them lined up and scheduled. We had a fender repair on Paul's grader this morning. The bolts had broken off the fender, so we replaced that. We had to pull the tire off and put it back on, but everything is good there. We picked up DEF fluid and a pump for the 772 for Ralph's Grader in Swan River. So that's all there and good to go. Cooks were scheduled. They hauled the trackhoe back to the yard, so it's sitting in the yard. And we're going to look at, it needs to be maintenance gone through it. So we're going to schedule maintenance from top to bottom, oil changes as time permits. And then the blade for that hoe is buried in the snow, so we got to dig that out. There is some repairs that need to be done for that blade, so we have it ready to go when we need to push the snow back from the ditches and stuff like that. The other thing that we spoke about earlier, Pat, and I forgot, I don't know if you wrote it down, is a leachate pond for the Bonito landfill. So in speaking, Pat and I had spoke to Mr. Dave Yonkers earlier in the year, and what has happened is there was an application made to build a leachate pond at the Bonito landfill. So our hands are bound by that now. The permit has been approved. So we have to look at building a leachate pond to pump the water out of the household pit into this leachate pond. There's absolutely no way we can get around it. That leachate pond, there was supposed to be a temporary pond that was to be built in October. We knew nothing about it until January when Pat and I spoke to December to Dave Yunker. So he said that at this point there was no point trying to build a temporary one because everything is frozen, but we have to look at a leachate pond for this spring. We can put it to, it would be the west of the active pit now. There is room there. We'll have to do a little bit of clean up around that area. Doesn't have to be high berms, but we have to have a system in place now that will pump that water out of the active pit into that leachate pond. So unfortunately there's no way we can get away because it's been applied for and approved.
So where it's going to go though is not going to be in the way of the next pit, right?
Correct. That's right, yeah.
Can you speak for just a moment before we take questions here about the importance of what we need to do at the landfill with the moving stuff now, the initial cleanup and then the covering?
So it was discussed previously that we were going to have Jay Barkman come in on a weekly basis to cover the landfill. That, as far as I know, has never taken place. I did speak to Jay. Jay met me up at the landfill. He did provide quotes to council for an initial cleanup, which would be to push all the garbage back and do an initial cover, and then to maintain it on a weekly basis so we don't have the bags blowing around and everything. It was said that there was going to be some hog fuel hauled from LP to the landfill in November. It was reject sand that was hauled there, so we have a frozen pile we can't do anything with, so we're going to look into getting hog fuel hauled there. So Jay has a pile that he can use to cover it so the bags don't blow around and everything, and just makes it easier for Lyle and it doesn't look so bad.
It also, there's a report coming to council tonight that talks about the garbage not being compacted there. Is there any way to compact it as we do it now, or do we need a compacting truck to make that really work properly?
You would need a compacting truck. There's just absolutely no way that we can compact it right now. We just don't have the equipment to do it.
So who wants to go first with questions? Councillor Deputy Burick.
I see you have 3-ton truck taken to Grazers. Is that the one from Bonito?
Yes.
What kind of truck is it?
That's a 3-ton with the box that we used to haul.
What kind of truck?
It's a Ford F550.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Another question you had, the one hole brought in for service.
That's the 210 John Deere.
Okay, how about the wheel hole? Where's the wheel hole?
The wheel hole, I am...
It's in Durban.
Oh, it's in Durban. That's right. Thank you.
Has it been running?
It has not been used since fall.
That's another one that should be serviced then probably for spring cleanup.
Well, it will have to be on a warmer day where we can get a cord to plug it in, and it hasn't ran since fall.
It's close to the shop, close enough to plug in.
Yeah, we just have to run an extension cord to it.
Okay.
There was some discussion about that, I've heard, of whether or not it even works. So if we have the opportunity, can we make sure it does actually work?
Absolutely.
There was some discussion that there were some issues with how mobile it was, I think, but then I think there was some discussions from the consultant that maybe the settings weren't right when they tried it, and if the settings were right, then it would
work. I
fine.
know there was work done to it in the fall. Yeah, and it could be just the settings in the drive motors, but definitely
Yeah,
we can get that plugged in and get it looked at.
Yeah,
Because
just so we know, because we certainly hope we don't have a flood this spring, but if we do, it would be nice to know if we can trust it to go someplace.
yeah, absolutely.
And the small hole, where's the small one?
The John Deere tobacco is in the cold storage.
The little one?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's ready to go?
Yeah, it's ready to go. We're gonna move some of that sand out of there. We're gonna take a little more to Benito, and then discussion was today with Don that SVS would come in and do Pont Drive and some by Pioneer and a couple other corners. There was a couple corners by Reels where they're coming down at the main off the hill, and there's 2 corners there that they were gonna sand down pretty good because it's slippery when they come around the corners there. So.
At Blosha's corner.
Do you do sanding,
Not
do you do
that
sanding,
quick.
like, the approaches to the highways? You do that?
Only in Benito.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Whitehew?
I have one, that's just about that pit you're talking, you're gonna pump the water out of the main pit into there.
That's correct.
Does that have to have a special liner or anything, or is it just supposedly water going in there, just,
There
what is
will.
the purpose of it? I guess?
So it's an evaporative pond is what it is. You take the water out of the main pit, put it in there, and then over time it just evaporates so you don't have a buildup of water in your main active pit.
For leaching purposes?
Leaching, yeah.
So the garbage doesn't
See-
leach into the ground underneath it, or what?
Originally, when that pit was designed, we weren't required. Because of the clay content in the material, we were not required to have a leachate pond. I'm not sure what happened from the time that we built that pit to December where it was requested that we build a leachate pond, or by who. So I'm a little concerned what happened there, because we weren't required on the initial build.
The only knowledge I have of it is when I arrived here, it was already in progress.
The active pit,
The leachate pond. Because the first day I got here after the election, it was already on the radar that there was a leachate pond being built.
there's no leachate pond being built.
No, but that's,
Yeah.
when I got
yeah.
here, he's like, oh, we have to have this leachate pond and we're building this thing.
Under the
I don't know how it got to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was part of the whole building of the pit, in contact with J.R. Cousins when they did soil samples and everything, Dave Yunker. There was nothing requested of us to build a leachate pond. So I'm not sure what happened from that point to December where now we're required, other than I know it was applied for and approved, and now we're bound to it, so.
Any other questions, Mr. Whitehew? Things, go ahead.
So if you, who does the sanding, say at our place here at the north end on, say, 216?
That would be SVS.
Oh, big, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was you. I thought I saw you with the sander once, but maybe.
Nope,
maybe-
not that far.
Okay.
How about at the airport corner? Who does that, the town guys?
That would be the town or SVS.
Yeah, because I know years ago we had a little agreement, we'd grade Affluent Street for them, they signed a couple of corners.
Yeah, a little bit of give and take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things are going all right.
Very well.
Good.
Yeah, very well. Everything's going good. Everybody's working together. That's good.
Nice. Nothing else from anybody? No? Thank you for coming in this evening. It's always good to see you.
You're very welcome. Yes, it's been a pleasure. It's been a while.
That's very good, Bill. Thanks. That's nice.
You're very welcome.
Nice to see you.
Yes, same with you.
Report, yeah, it's a good report. Thanks.
Have a good evening.
Yes. You too.
A resolution resolves the Public Works report presented by the Urban Public Works lead hand be accepted as presented. Is there a mover, Councillor Burick? Seconder, please. Councillor McGregor. Any discussion on the report? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We will move on to section 7, general business. Let's go 7.1, Western Financial. So they have presented us here requirements for our insurance policy. The municipality must now have an abuse and molestation policy added to our existing harassment policy. We're cautioned in the letter that if we don't do this, it could affect our ability to obtain insurance coverage in the coming year. So there's a sample policy provided by the insurance company. That is the wording they would like it to be. It's provided for you in AllNet if you want to review it. I went through it. It's fairly typical. Much of it, I think, was already covered by some of our existing policies, but this is the wording they recommend. We have a resolution for this. Whereas Western Financial Insurance requires the municipality of Swan Valley West to adopt an abuse and molestation policy to be added to the existing harassment policy, therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Swan Valley West adopt the policy attached hereto and make it part of the municipality's harassment policy. Is there a mover? Councillor Blosha, a seconder. Councillor Neely. Discussion on the resolution or the policy itself. Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favour? That's carried. 7.2, Urban and Rural Animal Control Officers' Reports. Be it resolved that the Rural Animal Control Officers' Report and the Urban Animal Control Officers' Report be accepted as presented. A mover, please.
I'm reading it sideways.
Second, Councillor McGregor. I think there's a button.
There's a
on
button
there.
right here.
Yeah, there's a
I
button.
know there is.
Right there.
You got a button to turn it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
turn it any way you want.
Oh, it
Upside
goes
down.
Upside down, sure.
And then keep turning
Yeah,
it.
keep spinning. Meanwhile, we get dizzy.
I don't know how to turn mine,
Discussion on the report. Questions, comments? Everybody's had a chance to see it, sideways as it may be, then we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. 7.3, Swan River Fire Department January call report. Be it resolved that the Swan River Fire Department report be accepted as received. A mover, please. Councillor Kushniryk, seconded by Councillor Burick. The report is provided. Is it also sideways?
Pardon me?
Is it also sideways? Oh, no, it isn't.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay. I fixed mine already then. 2 calls for Swan River Fire Department. Both of them motor vehicle incidents, so they've certainly sent in some invoicing for that. Many of you will have received a note from the AMM in the last day or so about MPI changing the rates paid for motor vehicle accident claims. So I know the fire chief noted to me that while it shows an amount here, it doesn't necessarily mean they always get paid that because there's some policy limits from MPI. So that email that you got from AMM kind of discusses what the new limits are and what we can expect to be paid when we go to a motor vehicle accident. Any further discussion on the report? No, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. We will move to section 8.1, General Cheques. We're going to start with the resolution, then we'll go into discussion after that. And there's 2 batches of checks here tonight, so we'll just start with the first one. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West hereby approves the following payments. General Cheques number 18592 to 18621 in the amount of $97,115.51. A mover, please. Councillor Neely and Councillor Burick. Discussion on those checks. I have the invoices here if there's anything you're curious about. Actually, they have the second batch. Is there a different batch?
Yeah, the first batch was from January, end of January.
Okay, so I don't have the end of
And
January ones.
I
but
can
we-
grab them for you if anybody has questions on that.
Okay, which check are you after, Councillor Blosha?
Just 18602, I wondered why it's got Pat's name on there. When it's,
There
Oh,
was no working credit card at the
Okay, well,
municipality,
I'm
so we had to charge it to her. We do now have a working credit card.
okay, I was just wondering, because I thought, well, this is weird, it's a domain thing, we
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
the
was gonna
renewal.
expire if we didn't renew it that day.
And I take it the same thing, 18605, she paid for
Yeah.
that?
Payment?
No, Holly.
18605 is Saturday.
She must have paid for them
Oh,
and then
Polly.
paid her
And then
back.
Oh, yeah.
Brought a receipt in, yeah. Any other checks on the first batch that are of interest to folks?
Not done yet. Close.
Okay. 18607 shows it's a fine for Reals Hill, and it is, but it's not the fines we're fighting in court. That was a mandatory order for the destruction of trees that we can't appeal. So that one's gone through already. Somehow I feel like we had these checks at the last meeting.
Mm-hmm. Actually, some of them I'm sure we did.
Yeah, cause I remember signing these checks already.
I remember seeing those ones, not necessarily the numbers, but definitely, you're right, those were, because I'm thinking, well, these are the same. Can't pay them twice.
For a second.
No, we wouldn't have done that.
Stuff from January, or from December, I mean.
The resolution that was passed doesn't have those check numbers in it, but they were presented at last meeting,
Yeah.
so.
Well, the same with the 18605, that was on the last meeting.
I don't see a resolution last meeting that approved them, however. We approved checks, but not those ones. We approved earlier ones, by the look of it.
And that's what I was going by.
Yeah. Okay, so we have looked at them before, because I know we went through these checks at the last meeting. Further questions on these ones, though? Anybody else have questions? Not, we'll call the question on that. Those in favor? It's carried. Let's move to the checks that are new tonight. These are the ones that we do have here. Resolution for them as well. Be it resolved that checks number 18623 to check 18686, the amount of $95,551.96 be approved for payment. A mover, please. Councillor Kushniryk, seconder, please. Councillor McGregor. So those are new checks we have not seen before. I'll take a moment and look at them. I'll flip them to. There's a couple in here that were worth mentioning, I think. First one, the 734 custom apparel. That's the jackets and overall, coverall type things that came out of the safety requests and the agreements that were reached there. ABC Fire and Safety is fairly sizable, it's $21,000. Some of those invoices relate to the Benito Fire Department, so there's some small tools there. We're also seeing the invoice for those 8 masks that were bought, so they cost $6,600. There's also fit testing for the masks, that's a $1,700 touch. And then there are some other things being picked up here, invoices that had not, for whatever reason, been processed prior to the elections. There's one here from July. It's for $8,000 for items for Thunder West.
What's that for?
It's for a Ram power pusher, 25 feet, and a set rapid all-around stabilization kit. My understanding of the Ram power pusher is that it pushes vehicles. I don't know if it's what moves the firewall or if it's what moves the vehicle over, and the stabilizer kit keeps the vehicle from moving when you're working under it. So if there's someone under it or in it, you
Okay.
stabilize the vehicle. So if say it's sitting on the side, it can't fall on firefighters while they do the work. Some small tools there. There's also a $1,500 charge that relates to the large grass fire and structure fire in the Alpine area in the fall. One of the firefighters was fighting fire there and suddenly became extremely warm, and something to the side of him that was out of his vision had flared up and melted half his turnout gear. So that was the repair for fixing the turnout gear, which was quite thankful all it was turnout gear.
What's a new set of turnout gear worth, 3,000?
Well, 3,500. So they claimed it was cheaper to fix that one because it was almost new. If it had been more than a couple of years old, I think we would have just said goodbye. But it was, from what I understand, it was the first fire it had ever gone to, and got a little too close to the fire. Air Masters for batch of signs, we approved that as a council previous. Most of them are normal stuff after that. Certainly some blades and some work. So,
186.53, that's a
18653.
18653.
Yeah. That was rekeying, Durban Dale Swan River shops. Commercial locks and 3 shops, 4 locks, 3 shops. Labor and mileage.
What's 18,674?
And you're way down the road there, Brian. Ooh.
18674, peak performance, clearing snow at the municipal shop at Swan River's roof. It was leaking.
Oh, that's on the roof then?
It's on the roof.
Okay, okay, I thought that was maybe yard clearing or something. It just says yard, shop and yard, so.
Looks like 5¼ hours of clearing snow and ¼ hour of wheel loader to remove snow from the building. There's one for ReproMap for 70 maps, which we resell. Many of those have been sold already. Somebody will have to look into what we pay for them compared to what we sell them for. Because it doesn't seem to be, seems we're paying more for them than we actually sell them for, so we should revise that shortly, I'm sure. Something will come forward to council for that, if you could make a note, Mrs. CAO.
$18,680.
18680. So this actually goes back a while.
Is that for
This is Stokowski Contracting for 1,144 yards of crushed gravel. So this was gravel that was in Cobra's Pit in Pretty Valley, that was not owned by the municipality, but was trucked out by the municipality by accident and applied to roads. So we had asked the contractor to consider selling us more gravel because of the upcoming shortage for this summer. And they had been a little hesitant to do that over the fact that we had taken 1,144 yards of gravel from them and not paid for it. So we agreed that we would pay for the gravel, seeing how we did indeed take it. And there's no dispute that we took it, and there's no dispute how much we took it. We had our own load slips to say how much it was. It had just never been paid for previously. And I'm not entirely sure it was last summer. I think it was 2 or 3 summers ago that it happened.
Is that what they were asking for payment for, or was that something else?
So when you heard that there was a request for payment before, it was from the trucking company,
Okay.
and they later confirmed it was sent in error.
Yes, because I actually looked into that and knew that they were paid in full. I was
So
gonna
they-
tell you that, but
they
I didn't
sent
see
an
it
email,
on here.
saying,
It
well,
was-
what are we gonna be paid? And we went back and said, well, what's outstanding? Like, oh, no, we sent it to the wrong municipality, sorry.
Yeah, no, because they were paid.
18681, you might be somewhat interested in this invoice for sanding. And so the corners on River Road from town limits to Road 161, corners intersections on Westland Road, Willow Run, corners intersections on Potton Drive, essentially that's a $350 touch each time we do that section. Red Wagon, sorry, number 10 intersection, both sides is $75. Pioneer, the number 10 intersection was the both sides to the elevator approach, $90 each time. And then if we're spreading our own sand, because we do have some sand, it's $120 an hour just for spreading without the sand. So adds up fairly quickly doing sanding on a custom basis. I don't know if we'd ever have the appetite for having our own sander. We certainly have a truck we could probably put it in if we had to. The one we have in Benito is so small that it's not, it just wouldn't work. We'd have to have a bigger one for that.
And then you need somebody to run it, and you
I know.
get to the point where,
And then you have to fix it.
and you gotta fix it, you gotta license it, you gotta.
So. I think that is everything of interest. Any other questions on checks this evening? So we'll go back to the resolution that's on the table. If there's no further discussion, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Let us move to payroll. This is 8.2. So councillors are able to see the summary of payroll checks tonight, but they are not available publicly. So the information you're seeing there is only for your eyes because it contains some stuff that should not be shared. Resolution be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West hereby approves the following payments. Payroll payments for January 31st. Numbers 4441 to 4451 in the amount of $18,452.85. And payroll payments for February 15th, 4461 to 4472. The amount of $15,028.93. A mover, please. Councillor Neely, seconded by Councillor Kushniryk. You will note with interest, let me get your check number. The last one on there, I showed as employee 98. Sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Let me go back to the.
No, you're right, I think.
The amount is not, it's the other set of checks that the amount is so high. The payroll checks one link. So that's the end of January one, so I'm just drawing your attention to that particular check. The gross amount there is just a touch over $5,300 for 1 month. If we want to discuss why, we'll have to do that in camera, but that one was worth noting. Any other questions about payroll checks that we can do here? Otherwise, we probably have to, yeah, go ahead.
Just on the 86 one there, I didn't think he was working in February,
We'll get that one back up.
if you don't mind. Go back.
Holiday pay.
Oh, okay, well, that explains
It
it.
was owed.
Yeah, no, because I thought, well,
Yeah, holiday pay.
just wanted to see. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Now we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Is workable to show the payroll checks like that? I think it's useful, isn't it? To see them? Okay, we'll try to keep doing that then. Indemnities. This is for council. Be it resolved that the indemnities number 4452 to 4460 in the amount of $9,217.29 be approved. A mover, please. Councillor Neely. Councillor Kushniryk. Don't all race at the same time. The indemnities are there for you as well. Any questions or discussion on the indemnities that are shown tonight? I did have one resident contact me about these already. And I haven't responded, it was by email, but the response is going to be that generally we have our councillors put in what they believe is fair and appropriate, and that is simply how it is. Unless something is completely strange, we don't generally question the indemnities, but obviously they're welcome to contact anyone they want to contact and have a discussion. They're always welcome to call any of us and say, why is it that way?
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, why is mine the smallest?
No, that's
You live the closest. Let's just say it. Eh?
That could be part of it.
Just not getting the mileage.
They had shared concerns over the amount of time some councillors were charging as compared to other councillors. And for the particular concern, one councillor charged nothing for a special meeting.
I seen that.
And they felt that that wasn't appropriate, that we shouldn't let that councillor not do it for free. Or we shouldn't let them do it for free, we should force them to be paid. But again, it's the councillor's decision if they don't want to bill it. And so, yeah. Any further discussion? If not, call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We get to what I think is the most interesting part of the meeting, number 9, discussion, because that's where we get a chance to really talk about issues more than just the boilerplate stuff. We're going to start in with the Bozeman landfill. So this came up at a previous meeting. We met with the Shared Services Committee of Manitoba's Bozeman. They were concerned that while refuse comes from our municipality to the Bozeman landfill, they were paying to haul it away, and we weren't necessarily paying them for the privilege. So we had talked as council that we were agreeable to having a dumpster there that is for Swan Valley West residents. They will provide the attendant that says if you're from Swan Valley West, please put it there. If you're from Minnetonka's Bozeman, please put it in the other dumpster. So tonight 2 quotes have come forward. One of them from Swan Valley Solutions, SBS. And I worked with both vendors a little bit here on quoting this to a way that would make sense to us. Because the original set of quotes was kind of hard to understand. So what SVS has quoted here is a yearly rate for a dumpster to sit there And then there's also a rate for a lid that adds more volume to the dumpster, so it's not, has to be emptied as often. And then there's a fee for dumping it. So the original quotes, it would be emptied at a certain time frame. Minnetonka's Bozeman offered that they would call whoever we choose as a vendor to empty it when it became full. So we wouldn't empty it when it was half full and waste a trip. So that's why the quote is like this. So the $3,050 is only for the dumpster to be there, the actual rent on the dumpster, whereas the $220 is every time it needs to be emptied. In addition to that, though, there will be tipping fees at the Swan River landfill, is where it would go to. The estimate is about $70 a load for tipping fees at the current schedule. We explored what the mileage would be to take that to the Bonito landfill, and it would far exceed the $70. So it didn't make sense to go to Bonito where we wouldn't pay the tipping fees. It would be cheaper overall to pay the tipping fees. And we do receive some portion of that back if you really stretch your mind into it, because it becomes income to the landfill, which we have to pay the losses on. So about 30% of that ends up as less expense for us later.
Okay, so the second quote though, how do we compare it to the first quote? Because I don't.
The second quote was interesting. Took a little while to get that one. So they quoted $10 a day for the big dumpster that they have there, but they weren't able to tell us how big it is. And then $150 an hour for emptying it. So they also didn't really have an estimate for the emptying. Certainly if we look at SVS, they're about 2 hours to empty it. So I did rough math on this and came around to the idea that the SVS one was cheaper both on the rental and the hauling. I think it was cheaper enough that
The rental. for
even if
sure.
my math wasn't perfect, it was quite a bit cheaper.
No, I just.
'Cause the rental would be $36.50 basically.
$600 a year cheaper.
Yeah. And then the hauling, I think by the look of it, it's going to be $50 a time cheaper hauling with SVS. But we did at least get 2 quotes, which was nice, because I was afraid we may only have one. What are council's thoughts on this? Do we want to proceed? Are we comfortable picking
Yeah,
SVS?
they have an attendant there to make sure that other people aren't putting their stuff in there.
Yeah, I think it should work.
This is just a dumpster, or it's for all garbage, right?
Yeah, Bozeman is only a transfer station. I think they still collect metal separately, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
They
metal
haven't said
piles,
anything else
everything
will
else
go
has
into
to
this
go in.
dumpster. So it might have to be hauled quite often, maybe.
It could be, we would hope not, but
It would be
The old-
for household only,
Mhm.
household materials.
yeah, it won't accept construction, I don't think, at the Bozeman landfill. It's a transfer station, I
Okay,
should
it's
say.
just household garbage.
The
Well,
alternative,
it might last a while.
yeah, the only alternative we've been offered is if we don't put something there, they no longer accept Swan Valley West residents at the transfer station, which makes sense. They don't want to pay for our residents to haul it to, and I think they're taking theirs possibly to Minnetonka still
Yeah.
from there to avoid the tipping fees, but the mileage makes a little more sense for them. So do we want to bring a resolution on this?
I think so, I guess so. I'd say so. So SV looks the best, huh?
I believe, does SV Solutions, does it require a 2-year commitment or is it a 1-year commitment?
It says a
Six.
24-month term.
No, that's different. That's not this quote, that's a
Yeah, the
different quote.
second, this
Oh.
one. This
This
one
one's just
says yearly.
Okay. So do we want, what's our will, do it for 1 year and revisit it? A resolution be it resolved that the Council of Swan Valley West contract with SV Solutions to provide refuse services at the Bozeman landfill as per the attached quote. For the period of 1 year. Anybody not like that? Does that capture what we're thinking?
Looks good.
Okay, a mover then, please. Councillor Burick, a seconder, please. Councillor McGregor, any further discussion or changes? No, we'll call the question. Those in favour? That's carried. interesting numbering, but we'll go to 911. This is a proposal that was sent. We didn't request this. It was sent by the vendor, SV Solutions. Provided us some options on what it would look like if we did dumpsters at strategic locations in the municipality. They were suggesting River Road area to put a dumpster there. Possibly also could do it at Kenville or the Durban area. They came up with the River Road quote is what they've provided here. It would be $925 a month, which would be a 15-yard dumpster emptied once a week. On top of that, we would pay landfill fees, and we'd be required to do it for 2 years. So the concerns that come with this, obviously, is we don't currently have a process for charging garbage collection outside of the LUD, with a few limited exceptions right around the LUD. But for the River Road area, we don't have a special services bylaw or anything there. So if we were to provide refuse services at that location, immediately at least it would be at large, so everyone would be paying for it, which would raise the question of why some got and some didn't. And I would suggest it'd be a secondary issue, that because there'd be no tipping fees and the Swan River landfill is now going to $9 minimum tipping fee, we would likely see substantial traffic from the town of Swan River if we had a dumpster at the River Road location, because it would be far, far cheaper for them to drive 1 mile out to the dumpster than it would be to pay $9 at their own landfill. So
I
The
just
rate's
don't,
going up.
going to 9 minimum,
I
7
don't,
right
I
now,
don't think that it's a
Yeah, when
feasible
is it
thing.
going up?
I don't think it's feasible.
anytime soon.
Yeah, I was there yesterday.
Because where do you
7
stop?
bucks.
Then you're gonna put one there, you're gonna better put one up in Kenville, and then,
I wouldn't be opposed to doing garbage collection there, like we do in Benito. You know, if we had a compacting truck and we levied a similar fee like we do in Benito for garbage collection, I could see offering that service there. You know, and we could do
It's
that with our
different.
own truck and our own forces and come in and do it, and it would be at the end of the driveway. So it would be self-policing. It would only be their garbage, and they'd be the ones upset that somebody was abusing it.
I think the previous council, when I was campaigning, people were telling me that they were gonna charge them $300.
It was a little excessive.
Yeah, the 300 a year, I think, for garbage pickup.
And originally that was based on, I believe, was it OSS quoting? Or was it, yeah, it was OSS. So it was having OSS come and do it with their bins. So certainly something, if we have interest in it, we could look at it some more and figure out some options. Probably not for a month or two until we have our finance person working and they get caught up, and then we could run numbers. But if we're all okay with it, we'll just pass that one by.
How much
without-
was it a month?
For this,
Yeah.
$9.25 plus tipping fees
A month?
a month. So we'd be
but that's
likely
just
to-
for a dumpster.
That's
Yeah,
just
that's
one
what I
of
mean.
them.
One,
That's what I mean.
I know, it's.
and then like you say, what will be going in it?
Mhm.
And it's
I-
not monitored.
It would be
Yeah.
interesting.
It's just like
I could see where
recycling bins.
people would drop
You
some
put
of the
5
garbage
dumpsters
in.
and 60 grand a year.
Jamie wouldn't have room for his because somebody else would have thrown the garbage.
No.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I mean.
Let us move to 9.2. Mr. White alluded to this a little bit in his presentation. So we have a quote here from JTL Vaco Services for 2 things. One is an initial cleanup of the Benito landfill, and then the secondary quote is for a weekly covering. So under the terms of our landfill license, we're to be covering. We can be required to cover daily, but we've reached an agreement with the good folks at the Manitoba government that we only have to cover weekly. They point out, and you'll see a letter here later on, that we haven't been doing that. So we are required to if we want to have a landfill there. So the weekly kind of has to happen, and we could seek more quotes. The reason this was done was because there's been work done with it previously, and we also have that contractor equipment list. And from what my understanding is, staff had surveyed through, and this was the only contractor on the list that had the appropriate equipment for what needed to happen there. So the first quote is for
Initial.
2671.20, which is a one-time cleanup. Basically be a full day of work there to push the garbage back, get it all like it should be, and then going forward from that, we would be expending $556.50 a week to cover the landfill as we're required to do so. So it's certainly going to be around a little under $2,500 a month, but not by much.
And we have to do this.
My understanding is we have to do this.
And we got one quote.
We do. Now, the quotes were provided by staff. If you would like us to go back to staff and ask for more, that wouldn't bother me.
No, I don't.
Just from what I understood from, because I asked why is there only one quote, and the answer that was provided was to do with the actual equipment that was needed. It was about the tracks on the equipment, and it needed to be a tracked unit to do the work.
Yeah. No, I don't have a problem with it. I just saying.
Yeah, I prefer we bring 2 or 3 quotes when we can, but my understanding was, and I certainly didn't call the vendors myself, but that's what I gathered was why it was one quote. I did speak, Mr. Barkman called me on this quote, and he indicated he put 4 hours on the weekly, but that he would be agreeable if it didn't take 4 hours, that he would only charge what it actually took. It was only a 3-hour job 1 week, he'd charge the 3 hours instead of 4. So it wouldn't necessarily always be that, but certainly it could be. What this doesn't provide is the hog fuel covering. That is still a work in progress. My understanding on the hog fuel itself is that sometimes it's free, but sometimes there's a cost, depending on who has it and where it comes from. And so we're investigating that as looking for the free version, but may not be able to get it. We only need the hog fuel in the winter because it doesn't freeze solid like our clay does. In the summertime, we can use existing clay bank on site for covering. But this quote does not include the hog fuel. We still have to purchase it or locate it. What are the thoughts of council on this? Who wants to go first?
We're looking at what, 7,000-8,000 a year likely to do this.
Oh, more like.
More.
25,000.
Yeah, 25,000 a year.
Sounds like we gotta do it, so I mean, it's just a matter of who.
The only thing, and I don't know that it'd be any wiggle room if we were doing it and we were finding that, but we haven't done it in months. If we were doing it every week and we're finding that maybe that was excessive, we could probably talk to environment and say, you know, this doesn't make sense
We do
anymore.
it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, you know, but I think initially they're quite set on us doing it every week.
Likely, you know, you're gonna not haul a great big cat up there either because it'll cost you more per hour, I mean, and the hauling and everything else. I mean, small bulldozer, basically, eh?
There was another contractor who used to provide services at the Benito landfill for many years. And I ran into him and asked him if he was interested in putting in a quote, and he said that he really wasn't, he just simply didn't have time anymore. So that would have been another quote. But he said that he wouldn't be able to do it, so.
Said resolution be it resolved that the council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West contract with JTL Backhoe Services for initial cleanup of the Benito landfill and ongoing weekly covering of the Benito landfill as per the attached quotes. Does someone wish to move that? Councillor Neely, is there a seconder? Councillor Kushniryk, any discussion on the resolution? If not, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. We will proceed to 9.3.
What are we gonna do on this annual one then? Is that the one we just?
We did them both together.
Oh, you didn't get it?
Yep.
Okay.
So Swan Valley Fire Commission, the Shared Services Committee of Swan Valley West and the Fire Committee both met with representatives from the Municipal Relations Committee, I think is what they call it, at the town of Swan River. Something. They were here anyway. They were pretty friendly. We bought them some donuts. So they and us discussed fire at length. We were here a couple hours, I think, at it. We looked at a draft agreement. Substantial changes were made to it at the meeting, and a new draft was created. Now, my understanding, and I should check my phone, is that the Swan River Town Council is meeting tonight for committee of the whole. And this agreement is also on their agenda tonight. And the agreement we reached with them was that we would wait until they got to it on their agenda in case they had some concerns or issues and wanted to talk to us further about it. So we'll certainly discuss it for a bit right now, but I think then we won't do anything with it until we wait a little later in the evening to make sure that they've got to it on their agenda. So the agreement as presented, I'll give you a quick overview of it, is to form an organization called the Swan Valley Fire Commission, which would thereafter be in charge of providing emergency services in at least select portions of the valley. Initially, it would be the areas originally covered by the Swan River and Thunder West Fire Departments. It would be a new organization. It would then hire a fire chief. They would advertise for a chief and hold a competition to see who would do that. The Thunder West Fire Department and the Swan River Fire Department would both be sunsetted. The town of Swan River would contribute all of their equipment and resources to the new commission. We would contribute select resources from Thunder West because we removed some of them to Benito for what they needed to update. But we would contribute essentially what's left of Thunder West to the commission. So I know certainly it's been painted already as one side giving the other side a fire truck. That's, in reality, it's both sides contributing the equipment to a new party. What is interesting in it is that the structure of the party provides for 50-50 control of it going forward, so that all decisions are made on a basis of a board that has 2 council members from Swan Valley West and 2 from the town of Swan River, so that there isn't a tiebreaker. Neither side holds a majority, so both sides have to come to agreement. There's a dispute resolution clause, if that can't happen, for the councils to become involved that have obviously tie-breaking ability in each council to figure out a solution. And if that still doesn't work, for arbitration to become involved. It provides that on a going forward basis, equipment would be obtained by the commission and owned by the commission. The cost of the equipment and the cost of the actual firefighting would be on the basis we have now, that it's shared by the number of hours each year. So say, for example, in a year where 60% of the firefighting hours were used in Swan River and 40% were used in Swan Valley West, we would pay 40% of the operating costs for the year, and we would pay 40% of the capital costs for the year. But we would both have 50-50 control over the actual organization, even though we don't pay 50-50 for it. It excludes the cost of capital for fire halls. The reason that was excluded was there were some concerns about if the town of Swan River was going to do major work to their fire hall. They would be able to do that as much as they wanted, but it would be excluded from the capital costs, so we would not share any costs of upgrades to their fire hall. They would lease that fire hall to the commission. We would lease our fire hall to the commission, and similarly, if we decided to make material changes to the fire hall, we would be responsible for the capital costs. But certainly our fire hall is very, very new, so it would be unlikely there'd be much to do there. It was also thought that that would prevent anything that might happen in Benito with the fire hall there from being borne by the Swan River taxpayers, because really Benito Fire Hall is kind of a separate deal. They don't particularly get involved in things in Swan River. So that's the basis of it. There is a separation clause in here which is worth noting. We talked at length at committee about the idea of making it so that there was incentive to stay in the commission and stay at 50-50 basis. So what it provides is that initially the inventory of each municipality is recorded, what goes into the commission. If a municipality chooses to leave the commission, anything that's still there of theirs, they can take with them. But over time, that inventory would become depleted. As fire trucks were replaced when they expired, the new fire truck would be owned by the commission. And so if you left, you would be leaving the fire truck with the commission. You wouldn't be paid out a share of it. So over time, it would cause you to stick together more and more. We discussed at length a new fire truck for the town of Swan River. They have provided quotes on one. They have selected the winning quote already. The question was if they should buy it, and certainly we've discussed here many times about our feelings on them buying a new $1 million fire truck. But they made an argument as to why we should consider it. And the argument was that the existing Thunder West fire truck that we purchased used requires $300,000 of upgrades to bring it to the acceptable standard that's expected for NFPA firefighting in this area. So we've spent $300,000 on it already. We would spend another $300,000 to upgrade it, and it's 8 years old. And it doesn't yet have the hose and stuff it needs. So by the time we're done, we would essentially have a truck that was 8 years of 25 years used up, that we'd spent $600,000 on, or we'd have a new truck that had 25 years left on it that we'd spent, I think it's 900 and some thousand, it's not exactly $1 million dollars. So it's very similar, except one has a lot of warranty and one does not. So the feeling of the group was that it was probably better to have the new truck, as hard as that is to swallow buying yet another fire truck. But there was an offer from the town of Swan River, which I certainly appreciated. What they offered and what's contained in the agreement is that we would contribute the used truck from Thunder West to the commission as equipment, with the agreement that the commission would then sell the truck. Whatever the proceeds are, it doesn't matter what it sells for. If it sells for $1 or sells for $400,000, that proceeds would fully pay our share of the capital cost of the new fire truck. So we would not owe anything towards their new fire truck. They would take the rest of it as a debenture to only the town paid. We wouldn't pay any share of that. So the quick math is that we would likely be saving $100,000 as compared to if a new fire truck was bought and we were paying our capital cost share of it, based on the historical amount of fires both ways. So it was an olive branch from them. The commission would look to sell that truck to Minnetonka's Bozeman. They're likely in the market for that truck. It was discussed that overall we would look to leave it in the valley because it would certainly help out. And my understanding is likely Minnetonka's Bozeman doesn't want the same NFPA standards that are as important around Swan River. And those standards basically relate to the insurance coverage that's out there. So any property, residential or commercial, any structure that's within 5 kilometers of the Swan River Fire Hall is receiving a discount on their insurance for fire protection. And that discount, depending on the property, can be several $1,000s. Some would be a lot lower, obviously depends on the value of the property, but it's a fairly substantial discount. To maintain that discount, the fire service must have 2 pumper units, and they must both meet NFPA standards. To only have one of them causes a reduction in the discount, and to have none of them causes the discount to be deleted entirely. So we wouldn't be a lot of choice in the upgrading of the truck, because if that was the other truck, it would mean that everybody's insurance went up. And while we would certainly save a little bit of money, everybody else that is already taxpayers who would pay a lot more, and they would probably pay more in additional coverage than we would actually save on the truck. So that's the Coles Notes version of a very long agreement. It's all in there, but certainly questions, comments.
There was room for other municipalities to join this commission if they wanted to as
Yes.
well, right?
It was written with the hope that Minnetonka's Bozeman would come in. So far as yet, that's probably not going to happen immediately. I would hope they would come in a few months, and then we would have to have a quick discussion about what that looks like. So far as yet, they've indicated they're probably not interested in such a thing. I would love to see them involved in it. I think it would be good. I don't know, like Benito, if it ever makes sense. Benito's so far out from here. Based on how we do the billing of the number of hours everywhere, we essentially would end up paying all of Benito's fees anyway. So whether it's Benito Fire Department or part of Swan Valley Fire Department, the cost is probably the same. It would just be a question of if there's any other benefits that would come along that would make it worthwhile. Part of the reason for the unusual situation of both councils discussing this tonight is the quote on the fire truck expires, my understanding is the 19th of February. So if they don't proceed on with it now, before the 19th, they've been advised that the price of the truck could escalate by $100,000 due to supply chain differences now from when the quote was originally provided. So it's an opportunity to save a lot of money to make a decision sooner rather than later. We don't speak for their council. Even without us, they may choose to go ahead and buy that truck. Under our current agreement though, if they choose to go ahead and buy that truck, we would be responsible for our fair share of it. So it would probably be more advantageous to us to be in an agreement like this when it was purchased.
About 35%, right?
Yeah. Other questions, comments, Councillor Blosha?
Just hear me out.
Absolutely.
Because I
That's what we're
know
here for.
where this is going anyway. Where did you say the grasslands truck was going?
So the grasslands truck goes to the commission, so it would be based in Swan River and available for use for any fire department that needs it in the valley.
Okay, I still think you should reconsider the building. They need a shop there. And that building should be built into their new shop. You heard tonight that the shop was leaking. There's other buildings, if you're just using it as more as a storage for the equipment. There's other buildings. The recycle center sits empty. It's owned by both entities. I don't know. It's just hear me out, because that building could the employees deserve a building like that. And another thing is, I think all members should be present to vote on this one. This is an important one. And Byron's not here.
He was at the committee meeting, so he has had some input there already.
Okay, but we haven't heard his input, so
I know Councillor Kushniryk had asked him about it extensively. Are you comfortable to share what he said?
Well, at the end of the meeting, I did ask him, my words to him were, from opposing viewpoints of the table, how do you feel about it now? And he had stated that if we're 50-50, it sounds pretty good.
anyway, that's my say. I'm not saying not work together. I'm just saying there's other
There's always
ways.
options.
And if you could,
The grasslands truck would basically be used in our ambulance.
So the way the agreement is contemplated, at least, if it was, I've spoken to Benito Fire at length about the location of the grasslands truck. And their feeling is that if the grasslands truck is in Swan River, if they're dispatched to a grass call, they would likely ask for Swan River Fire to bring the grasslands truck, and Swan River would bring it as 2 members in the truck to bring it out, not a full response. And it would be covered under our agreement, so there wasn't a particularly large amount of billing for it. It would be available to Minnetonka's Bozeman as well, which is kind of important to me, because my feeling is that truck is the best truck for grasslands in the whole valley, and nobody else has a truck like it. And so the central location, I would like to see Minnetonka's Bozeman use it. I'd like to come to some plan with them, even if they don't want to be part of everything, that truck would be available when they need it, because it just makes sense. Why wouldn't we want to stop a grass fire sooner, especially if it's in a field with, something burning that's worth $500,000 that we can get out there with. My concern was how quickly it would get there, and Benito's feeling was that it would get there quickly enough, because by the time they get to the hall and respond, they thought there was a good chance that for many grass fires, the grasslands unit would meet them there, with the exception of some locations in Alpine, obviously. It wouldn't work out. But they note that they have some shared members that are on both fire departments. So some of the members, even though they're paged for Benito, would likely also be those same members attending to Swan River to pick up the truck. So they live halfway between. They would simply drive the other direction, grab the truck and get going. So it seemed workable to them on a fire idea of how to make that go.
I just think you should reconsider where they're housed.
I can speak a little bit to the plans that were talked about. The hot equipment, as it was sort of referred to, would be at Fire Hall 1 in Swan River. So that's the equipment you would see go to an initial response to most things. The secondary equipment would be at Fire Hall 2, so it would be a second set of equipment. The existing pumper that's at Fire Hall 1, the Swan River pumper, would move to number 2 and be used for training and be used for larger incidents. They would also put the grasslands truck over there during the winter, because it's not suitable for use in the winter. And then during the winter, they would put different equipment in as their, basically the go kit. They would also use the second hall for all of their training, because the training facility is much better and it's closer to the training site. And it would give them the upgraded ability that when they're doing training, should there be a call, they would simply walk away from their training, get in another fire truck and go to the call, rather than trying to pick up their hose and get ready to go to a call. So they'd be able to immediately respond, rather than what could be a delay if they're out training.
Well, if you make that into the new shop, you can use the old shop.
So back when they
Just
built the
saying.
fire hall, how come they took the shop away from the guys?
At that
'Cause at some point-
time that roof was not leaking in that
When this
either.
first happened, I said it seems ironic that we had decided we needed a shop this big, and then we took half of it away to make a fire hall. And I said, now all we're gonna do is say we need a new shop this big because we took it away.
Well, that's just.
So it was okay then.
That's my opinion. That's your opinion, and it's fine. I'm just stating my opinion, and that's all I have to say.
Any other questions, comments? And my intention is we're gonna leave this and come back later, but certainly a discussion now is. Anybody else, or we'll move on, we'll come back after we're here. So let's go to 9-4 Planning District. This you heard about at the G8 meeting, if you were there the other night. Many of us were, not everyone was able to make it. So at Planning District, there's a need for a new development plan. The old one is outdated, it's paper only, and contains some what have become deficiencies over the years. The biggest need for it is the Arm of Mountain, because they do not have their own planning bylaws like the rest of the municipalities do. So they're currently unable to proceed with some projects, and they're having to violate the Planning Act to carry on with, for example, some of the new commercial businesses. So we're all having to turn a blind eye to the fact that they're in non-compliance just so they can have those businesses operate, which obviously no one's going to stop the business, but it would be nice to bring the act into compliance, because certainly large companies that come, if they can't be zoned correctly, will tend to leave rather than wait for rezoning. So they offered to pay 25% of the cost. The cost is a touch over $75,000. A grant was applied for half of it, the Building Sustainable Communities grant. I haven't heard back on that yet. The expectation is it will be granted, which leaves about $40,000 to be split between the member municipalities. Typically that would be split on the basis of assessment because it's planning district, but because Mountain wanted it so badly, they offered to split it on the 25%, like quarters, with everybody. So they would be paying quite a lot more than they typically would. They would pay a full $10,000 towards it, where their share would normally be just a few $1,000s. Swan River and Swan Valley West obviously have no concerns with that because it means we would pay less. We would normally pay more than $10,000 each. The outstanding question was Minnetonka's Bozeman. They were going to discuss it at a previous council meeting, but it didn't make the agenda. So they are discussing it now, and essentially must make a decision if they're willing to pay a quarter of it, $10,000, or if they wish to pay by assessment. If they choose assessment, they'll pay less than $10,000. So you can kind of see that's likely, but it may not be. You know, they understand that we're all in this together, so they're going to take a look at that. Whatever happens, there's a planning meeting coming up. Their response will come to that meeting. It will answer the question of whether it's coming back for share by assessment or share by 4 individual splits. And then I don't know that there'll be much of an argument against doing it. It needs to be done. It's required to be done every 5 years, but it doesn't always cost this much. The old one was done in paper, so there's nothing to start from. The new one is a digital version with the source files held by planning district. So what's been explained to me by staff there is that going forward, they would not need to spend money on it again. They would be able to simply update the files as needed, change the maps as needed, and bring it to us all for resolutions. So this should be seen as a one-time cost. Questions on that before we move on? It'll come back to us shortly once that decision is made by Minnetonka's Bozeman. Section 9.5, Settlement Services Request for Funding. So this is Northwest Regional Immigrant Services, and they are requesting our annual funding. We typically contribute $4,000 a year to this group. The town, I believe, also contributes $4,000 to them. And so there's some explanation here as to why. The group is funded jointly from the Manitoba and federal governments. Both of those programs have very strict rules about what can be done. The federal program allows only for permanent residents to be served. The Manitoba program allows for temporary foreign workers to be served, among others. But neither of the programs covers absolutely every situation. One of the most common situations is should a business come in and ask for help filling out paperwork to obtain a temporary foreign worker. They shouldn't do that under either the provincial or federal program. But the local funding, because they have a token amount of local funding, they're able to say, well, we've used the local funding for that hour that we proceeded on with, and so we can still do the work. It also gives them, I believe it's 5 hours of staff time a week additional, which makes some difference to their employees and how things work out. So the basic moral is, for $4,000 we get quite a lot in return, because there are a lot of paid wages there. At one time it was only Swan River. They provided services here, but a few years ago they expanded. So they now also have an office in the Pont, which is run out of the Swan River office, and it has a satellite in Flin Flon, So they serve clients from the Swan River Valley, the Pond, Flin Flon. They provide all of the settlement and immigration services for those areas. They've also been asked to apply to take over the Thompson area, which would be another operation that would be run out of Swan River. So while they'd have staff in Thompson, it would mean additional staff time in Swan River as well being paid for. So it's certainly something that brings in quite a lot of benefits to the valley. And that's to say nothing of the fact that it's actually helping immigrants settle and
And we need them,
be quite happy. We need a lot of them.
and they do the empty jobs.
You'll find that under this agenda item, there's a sanitized version of the request and budget. There's a second item under correspondence, which is a full package from them, but some of the information in that full package doesn't quite qualify for public release. So it's there for council to see what they're up to and some of their plans, but some of it was just a little too detailed for us to be able to release it without their permission, and they're quite clear on confidentiality requirements. Questions, discussion on this? Shall we bring a resolution tonight to fund them?
Please. Settlement services. They do a good job.
A lot of different people around town these days.
Yeah.
The resolution is written, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West approve the $4,000 funding request from Northwest Regional Immigrant Services Inc. for 2023. Is there a mover? Councillor Blosha. Someone to second the resolution. Councillor Neely. I should also mention that they're about to be charitable, which makes no difference to us, but I've been to a few of those meetings now. Boy, are they doing a lot of work. So they're doing some good things over there. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried.
Seems to me that used to be more like 7,000 or something one time. Isn't it?
No, it was like that one time we gave a little bit more when their audit was
Oh,
more.
it's on a figure of 7, so
There was,
ring the bell.
Next up, AMM. This is the spring session.
that's a long ways. No, not that far.
So we started rotating them, eh? I thought they were always in Brandon, weren't they?
So the,
Used to be.
once upon a time.
Yeah.
From what I understand now, they move, both of them move around.
Okay.
So the convention date's April 3rd to April 5th. April 3rd is mayors, reeves, and CAOs. Obviously, the 4th and the 5th is for all members of council. Is there anyone interested in attending? I know our interim CAO has expressed an interest.
What date is the 4th and the 5th?
Maybe Tuesday, Wednesday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
You're right.
Just in Brandon,
No, that's Winnipeg.
not Winnipeg.
Yeah. I would like to attend as well, obviously for mayors and reeves meeting, and hang around for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Anybody else wants to go though? Certainly it's an opportunity, it's always good to get together with other councils, and I know not everyone can find the time, that's just how it works sometimes, but if you can go, you're always welcome.
Check my schedule at the hospital. I'd be interested in checking, so.
Okay, so we're going to bring a resolution tonight, but what I'll do is I'll put your name in, and if you're not able to go, that's fine, you just won't go and won't. Councillor Kushniryk?
I think so. Gonna depend on Dad's medical.
Councillor Blosha, you're
No,
for work.
that's the middle of the week for
Yeah.
school. I can't.
Councillor Burick, I'm thinking you can't either.
Can do her.
He's a division employee. There's no one to fill.
Be it resolved, the council approves attendance of the annual AMM Spring Convention scheduled for April 3rd to 5th, 2023 for the following individuals and shall pay their expenses according to policy at Ellingson, Gade, Raymond McGregor, and Brad Kushniryk. Any discussion on the resolution? Sorry, a mover and a seconder first, we're gonna get to that. Councillor Burick to move it and to second it. Seconder for the resolution.
Okay.
Councillor Neely.
Everybody
Okay,
else got
discussion on the
sworn in.
resolution. Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We'll move now to 9.7, Chamber of Commerce and Crime. So this is discussion only, I think, unless we get crazy.
You got a resolution ready or no?
There's no resolution written, so I spoke to Deputy Burick earlier and said, if you want to spend money, you can write whatever you want, but otherwise it's discussion only. Chamber of Commerce has begun meeting again. I'm the Chamber rep for Swan Valley West, so they had their annual general meeting, and through a turn of entertaining events, I was elected president of the Chamber of Commerce. So I thanked everyone in attendance for that profusely.
Good for you.
So certainly we will have the ear of the chamber for any concerns we have. It is the Swan Valley Chamber, so it represents all the businesses in Swan Valley West as well. The chamber obviously is probably taking a very direct turn to focus on crime because it's become a bigger and bigger problem, as we know. And I know Councillor Burick wants to speak on crime a little bit tonight, so this is our opportunity to do that. I can share that there has been some preliminary discussion of the Chamber of Commerce possibly being a vehicle to hire security guards. That would be a shared cost service, so each business would put in some money and a security guard would be hired that traveled around the downtown area. And I can further share that at many meetings I've been at in the last few weeks, when we're done discussing the purpose of the meeting, if it's councillors, it's one thing, but certainly when you have members of the public in a meeting, the next discussion that goes on is them trying to decide what time of day is safe to shop in Swan River, which breaks my heart because we shouldn't have residents from our municipality or anywhere else trying to figure out when it might be safe to go grocery shopping. The popular time seems to be between 1 and 2 o'clock, by the way, is when people feel it's most safe to shop for groceries in Swan River. But certainly that's not a discussion we usually have in a country like Canada. We would normally not talk about when we felt safe. I don't have an ask tonight, Chamber hasn't come up with anything. There may be a future ask for Swan Valley West to do something towards something for crime, but certainly right now it's too early for that. But I did want to give everyone a chance to talk about the crime aspect, and there will be a time, and we heard it at G8, where the town may also be asking us to be involved in something. There was some preliminary discussions about a possible state of emergency being declared. That hasn't been sorted out yet, but we have had some negotiations with the town on that. If it was to come to fruition, we would likely jointly declare a state of emergency on crime because of our proximity to each other. But questions, comments, thoughts on crime and what Swan Valley West's role might be in solving this problem? Councillor Burick.
I'm open to any idea how we could solve it, but I just don't see how we can do anything on our own here, or even in our community. It's getting worse every day. Every day you hear something happening and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And I understood that the town was declared a state of emergency about a month ago, but for some reason they haven't.
That's correct.
And I was wondering if we could kind of take a leading role in that, or we can't, like just support a state of emergency in this community and maybe the town we back the town up or something. Is there something we can do? Because like just leaving it off, it's just nothing's gonna happen.
I could certainly entertain another discussion with McGregor Jacobson because he would need to be involved. I think it would be tough for us to declare a state of emergency as the town not doing it. I could see both of us doing it together. I know he edges closer and closer to that because he too, if we think we hear a lot about it, he hears 10 times more than we do every day of people calling the mayor about this and demanding he do something.
Because it's not just the town people, it's the RM people too.
Well, it's only a matter of time before it spreads out.
Exactly.
And we don't want an incident like the Stanley incident in Saskatchewan. That's coming if we don't do something.
Like, I mean, at the G4, you did an excellent presentation on the rise.
But without crime going away.
I know, and you were promoting the valley excellent. It was an excellent presentation that you did. Everybody liked it. But how is it going to encourage people to move to the valley? You drive down Main Street now and every building has bars on it. Some buildings have plywood on it. Like, I mean, it's just, what I'm hearing now is people are thinking of even moving away.
Several have.
Yeah, they're thinking, they haven't yet, but they're thinking of moving away to a, safer community or safer place to raise a family maybe, but it's something that we have to do. And just waiting and waiting, and like I say, every day you hear something. Every day it's something. Like,
There have been some preliminary discussions about some bylaw changes. The town currently has a rental safety bylaw that provides for rental accommodations to have a certain minimum standard. The bylaw is admittedly weak and doesn't fully comply with some of the latest legislation that Manitoba has. So there was some discussion at very early stages, but we could, if you council wishes, I could advance those discussions with the town. We now have the ability to impose administrative monetary penalties. So the thought process was shortening up the compliance deadlines, increasing the amount of penalties, and doing them as AMPs instead of as taxable penalties. The current bylaw, if you violate the bylaw and receive a fine, after many months that moves to your taxes. It's 2 years before you have to pay it and go to tax sale. The new regime the province allows us to do provides 75 days. And if after 75 days you haven't resolved the fine, your property can be seized and auctioned immediately. Which certainly you don't want to do lightly, but there are some accommodations in Swan River that are probably making the problem worse than better. And the bylaw could be rewritten so that within 75 days those accommodations could be owned by the town and residents could be evicted from them. Obviously, where do you put the people next? That's a huge question, but there are many individuals that think that shutting down those particular accommodations would be a step in the right direction. There's probably also many individuals that think that's the wrong idea, because when you just put people out on the street without a house, what do you do? But the bylaw could be strengthened to provide that option. Obviously, it takes time to revise a bylaw, but it could be provided, and then the question is if that's appropriate to do it or not. If the town went that way, I would suggest the new rules allow us to have a jointly administered bylaw, so we could pass the same bylaw and have the same person enforce it, no matter where you lived on the side of the line, which would prevent any issues with, say for example, those accommodations were closed in Swan River, a similar situation popping up in Swan Valley West, and thus them beginning at that point to deal with it. We could have the bylaw set up and administered already, so if you simply, and to speak of the accommodations that have 25 and 30 people in them a night that are meant for 2 and 3, like those are the types of accommodations that aren't meeting the safety requirements of the people living in them. And unfortunately, it's a matter of time until we see another fire and possibly the loss of life, because we have 25 people living someplace that's designed for 2 or 3. And in many of those situations, we're seeing the doors boarded up, so there isn't even an exit. Just crazy.
So when are you having this meeting with, when are you meeting with?
I will request a time. If we want to pursue that some more, I'll have the discussion with the mayor.
Yep.
At
Councillor
the
Neely?
G8/G4, whatever, they were talking about the GIS, what's that, Government Investigative Services, or what is that?
It's General Investigative Services from the RCMP. So my understanding, it may not be 100% accurate, but I'll try my best. The current contract the town has provides for 8 members. They are not allowed to just say what those members do. So the federal government decides what the priorities are, including a prescribed amount of time each week that the members must spend looking for speeders and looking for people using their cell phone in a vehicle, looking for drunk drivers. And certainly those are important. Those things kill people too, but it does tie up time from other things they could be doing. There are also members that are constantly taking calls, and so on many shifts, they never have a chance to actually go back and investigate anything because they're simply on to the next call and often have 2 or 3 calls waiting. The GIS section would be dedicated officers that are senior officers. They would do only investigations, so essentially they'd be detectives. Their job would be to go after the bigger crime, the drug dealers here, the drug distribution networks. They would spend their time investigating those things. Theft rings, obviously, there's some organized theft rings going on. They would focus more on that and would be looking for arrests. The RCMP is quite prime on the idea, and it only costs $600,000 a year.
For three.
For three
officers.
200,000.
Now, I'll give my best sales pitch, because I'll try my best. You get to tell those 3 officers what to do. So they aren't out doing seatbelt tickets. They would only be focused on the investigations. So it would be 100% of their time based on that. The town has indicated they may ask surrounding municipalities for assistance with the $600,000, and they're not at all convinced they can afford that either. The trial program that's coming, I think, is the RCMP's way of trying to show us how good the money would be if we spent it. My understanding is I'm not to reveal publicly the number of weeks or which weeks they will be here, but the program will be operating here for some time. And in camera, I can tell you that information, and see what happens with it, essentially, to see if there's a value to it. The RCMP are hoping the town chooses to continue, but the RCMP budget for the town is 1.2 to 1.3 million a year, so it would be a 50% increase in policing costs for 3 additional members, which would be good. I'm sure it would be good. It's just a question of, can the community afford that amount of money? Anything further in Chamber of Commerce, crime, it's kind of that business side of things? Not move to 9/8 Kendall Hall. I attended the Kendall Hall meeting the other night. I understand Councillor McGregor's had an opportunity to visit the Kendall Hall and get the same information from them. They're in a lot of trouble, to put it lightly. There was an incident last winter. The belief currently is that it was a snow load issue. Too much snow accumulated on the roof. It caused a structural failure of the roofing system. It would likely be fair to say that the building is currently in a collapse situation. It's collapsing as we speak, just very slowly. An engineer has looked at it and the building was not ruled condemned. They said it wasn't quite condemnable yet, but is getting that way. There's movement to the roof. There's tiles falling off the inside of the roof because they're coming loose. There's movement to the wall. There's movement, well, to everything. Looking through that building, there was nothing in that building that hasn't moved. Some of the items have moved 6 to 8 inches, some of them more than that. There's doorways now that have gaps beside the top and not at the bottom because things have moved so much this way. The hall board is concerned. Obviously, they had an engineer in to look at it. They devised a plan. It's the first quote they received was $168,000 to replace the failed portions of the roof. They'd have to remove the entire roof, put a new rafter system in, and then re-roof it. There's some concern about whether the foundation is appropriate, or whether there's things there. A budgetary number I heard thrown around in a meeting with the hall board I had was $250,000 to bring the hall back to a functional state. They pair that against the knowledge that they only held 14 rental events prior to COVID, the year prior to COVID, and the average rental was $65 a day. So they're looking at less than $1,000 rental income for the hall for a whole year, which they've been doing fundraising for. Obviously, the hall costs about $1,000 a month to heat in the wintertime. They had a booth at the exit grounds. They have sold the booth now to the Thunderhill Ski Club because they no longer had the volunteers to run it. They only have 5 or 6 members of the hall board. They haven't been able to attract any new members. So you can see where I'm leading to here. They're not entirely sure that it would be worth spending the money to fix it. It would be hard to argue that we would use tax dollars to fix that, and they certainly probably is beyond their fundraising ability. However, our insurance policy provides coverage for snow load damage. So the insurance company is back with an engineer. They're in quite the mood to get on with things. They will determine shortly, this week or next, if the damage was caused by snow loading. If it was caused by snow loading, the insurance company will immediately stabilize the building and begin working on a longer term plan. There are 2 options. We hold replacement cost coverage on that building. So they could be required to replace that building to a suitable standard that was safe, which I am not certainly a construction expert. My look at that building is they may have to flatten it and build a new one to do that. I don't know if they can undo the damage that's happened while they've been looking at this problem and deciding what caused it. Maybe they could, but if they couldn't, there is also discussion from the insurance company that they may be willing to offer a cash settlement to have the building demolished and then pay out a value towards the building, which would mean the loss of the hall. The hall board has discussed whether they might keep the addition to the hall and try to run a smaller hall, whether they might use the cash settlement to build a new building that was smaller and perhaps more manageable. No decisions on that because we don't even know if that's an option yet. But that's what's happening out there, and it's certainly, I would have a hard time to argue that that hall is long for this world. Unfortunately, it's such a beautiful building, it has so much history, but my first understanding of it was a small problem. When I went to see it, it's not a small problem. It's every rafter is destroyed and the entire building is pancaking out. We'll watch it, and of course we'll bring updates back to council once more is known. Certainly I hope it's an insurance issue because that would at least provide something. If it's not an insurance issue, there's a very real possibility the hall board will dissolve and we'll turn the hall in its current state over to us. And then it will become our problem. So hopefully we don't go there. Questions, comments on that before we move on? 9-9 Thunderhill Ski Club. Had an opportunity on the weekend to attend the Thunderhill Ski Club and take a tour of the new chalet. I don't know if anyone else has been out there yet. Councillor Blosha looks like she has been. Certainly they have extended
Not
an
in the
invitation.
new.
Oh, not in the new one yet? They've extended an invitation for any of us to attend or to come as a group. They'll provide a tour. They estimate they're 2 to 3 weeks away from opening if things go well. They're hoping to catch the end of the season yet. They have very small work yet to do. It is a very impressive thing that has happened at Thunderhill. It would be on the same scope as things you would see at Banff for a ski hill. I was in the new one and then I went to the old one for lunch, and certainly the old one has served its purpose for many years. But it is a night and day difference that will take Thunderhill from being a local attraction to a regional attraction. Much planning has gone in there. We heard from them at the meeting a few weeks ago of some of the things they do. We probably had a 2.5 hour discussion while I was there, the president of the club and I. And so there's a couple things that we should know. One is that some really bad things happened. They shared with me some of the things that had been said to them from Swan Valley West during that process. And they were quite hurt by many of them. They're pretty upset about what went on. They said that they value their working relationship with us. They're certainly going to work with us. They hope we want to work with them. But they shared some of the derogatory things said about members of their board, and the names that they've been called in meetings. And it was unfortunate. They also shared that Swan Valley West had withheld funding for a period of 4 months. And things had not gone well there. So I assured them that the past is the past and now is new. We believe the Thunderhill Ski Club is doing good things and we want them to continue. They indicated that one of the things that would hold back the ski club from being an even more regional attraction was a lack of a magic carpet, which is, if you think of a conveyor belt on the ground that hauls you up a ski hill, some ski hills have that. It's kind of an entry-level thing for small kids. It allows you to do tubing on the hill and certainly allows younger kids, 2 and 3 year olds to go skiing, which right now is a challenge at Thunderhill. And I suggested that there had been certainly discussion at the G8 meeting, at least in the corners of the room, about if we should be doing more for Thunderhill as a whole valley. I suggested they firm up their plans for that and bring that back to us so that we could at least know what it would cost and talk about it with our partners and say, here's some options for Thunderhill to be even bigger and better. I don't know where it would go, but so we at least know the number. We also discussed an additional quarter of Crown land, and we had discussed that at the meeting here once before. They would like to proceed with us asking the government for an additional quarter of the Crown land to be assigned to Swan Valley West so we could lease it to the ski hill. It would provide them some additional opportunity for trails. They indicated, and dream out loud, I have to give them credit for dreaming, that they've located an additional lift that is for sale that they might wish to locate to Thunderhill onto that new quarter and provide a third lift with a new run system that would feed back into the new chalet. They certainly have plans there that are to be commended. They're young and into it and they want to grow. They talk of drawing people from Winnipeg and Regina out to that hill because it's certainly an attraction that's quickly becoming that. So I'm going to investigate what it takes for us to do that. We don't know the answer yet. We'll find out what the process is for us to make that request and see if we can go through that process and get that for them. So we can do that because my understanding is it's not so much cost as political will. So we'll chase that down a little bit. We should also look into, as we start talking economic development soon, and we'll do that with Rise, but we'll do that here too. That is a substantial attraction that we need to be promoting at every opportunity. And it's in our municipality. And I know sometimes in the past with economic development, people have said things like, oh, it's all in the town of Swan River. Sure, we all work for economic development, but the town benefits. But really, in this particular case, there's some huge benefit to us. One interesting thing they inquired about was Bonito and our plans for Bonito. They went so far as to suggest that they were considering looking for possible investment for Airbnb units in Bonito that would be rented by people that were attending the ski hill. So there's lots of good things there. I'll chase specifically the Crown Land thing, and we'll keep just plodding along with the rest, but
Very
we
good.
will all be invited, obviously, to the grand opening, and I would hope everyone can attend. We'll get your dates once it's ready, and we'll see how quickly they can do that. Any questions, comments on Thunder Hill Ski Club? Are we good to keep going for a while? We'll go into 10, we don't need a break yet? Okay. 10-1. Some of us may have a different opinion on that landfill inspection.
Okay.
So this is, we're in correspondence now. So these are letters and things we received. Some of these probably do require resolutions tonight, but they came to us, I thought we'd throw them in correspondence. Landfill inspection letter, this is dated February 10th, but it's for an inspection conducted July 28th, 2022. So the council will see some things in here saying that signage isn't quite right, there's a major cleanup needs to be done, some bulky waste issues. They note the lack of compaction in the active areas, significantly shortening the life of the cell, and that we should be doing compaction either in the cell, which Mr. White said is very difficult, or look at compacting before the material arrives. Fencing was ineffective, and some delays on fire reporting at the facility, so they have some new rules for us for fire reporting. Many of those things were taken care of already. The fencing is done, we're obviously working on some of the cleanup and such. So staff will work away at this and make sure that it all gets done appropriately, and we have Mr. Yunker happy, which would be good. Questions, comments? 10-2, lagoon inspection letter, same gentleman, same dates. He inspected on July 28th, but the letter did not get sent until February 10th, so it's new news to us, some of it. There's a leak issue there that requires repair. Is that the cell leaking, or is that the pipe leaking that we fixed?
They think that it's where the pipe joins into the one that comes out
Okay,
of the lagoon. And this is nothing new, this existed
it's
for
been
a
ongoing.
while.
Okay, because I know previous councils struggled with that and trying to get it fixed up, and
Yeah,
so we'll work on that. There's obviously some operator certificate concerns there, so we'll look into that and make sure our ducks are in a row for that. As you know, we're already working on solving that through some other means too, but we'll make sure those concerns are taken care of, that we do have proper certification for the operators. Questions on that one? 10-3, the fire boundary map. This is information only. We've talked about this a couple times. It's the final map as filed, so it's all good. And the areas are correctly assigned, so it's not much to talk about there. 10-4, this I brought forward because we talked a little bit at G8. There was visiting doctors here last week. So some work was done to update the materials that were given to them. One of the things was a brochure that's provided that's a very quick look at why they should stay here and be doctors here. So this hasn't yet been funded, even though the work has been done. The mayor and I agreed that we would have the work done, and we would at some point before the end of February find a group to fund it. It will probably be Swan Valley Rise, but that's what the brochure looks like, and we'll get back to you on who paid for it once it's paid for. 10-5 is a settlement services information pack I spoke on earlier. We won't stop there unless anybody has a question. It's a lot more details about it in case you're interested in more of what's happening there. 10-6, Swan Valley Animal Protection League. They're requesting a donation. This is a form letter, so it wasn't sent specifically to Swan Valley West. And I don't know if that makes a difference to the rest. To me, it's certainly, when we get a letter that's addressed to us and speaks specifically to what they want from the municipality, I think that's treated maybe a little different than just a letter that goes to everybody without our name on it. They are looking for donations for their Raise the Rescue sponsorship program. Obviously, they're going to the new location there and doing some additional work that needs to be done. So that's an option if council wanted to look into that. Anybody wishing to bring a resolution right now? Not seeing any.
Wait till budget.
Sorry?
Should we wait for the budget and see, or?
Probably a good idea. 10-7, airport land use agreement. You would think it would be so simple, and yet it isn't. So the public are able to see the airport agricultural lease advertisement that was done by the town of Swan River. So the airport commission obviously looks after the airport. For whatever reason, the town of Swan River's logo's on it instead of saying airport commission, but whatever. They offered for lease the land. Council can see a letter that was received that's quite critical of that process. It's from Mr. Martins. He is the person that held the lease on the land since 1977, his family. So he indicates in the letter, and I'll just paraphrase some of it here and leave out some of the more confidential information that we weren't to share publicly. From 77 until 2016, they leased the land. It's directly beside where they live. Then in 2017, the town approached them with a lease agreement to continue using it. They agreed and signed. And then in 2018, they were told they were losing 2 acres for a new hangar. They lost 5 acres, but the hangar has not yet been completed. They indicate the amount of nitrogen they're putting in every year. They say that they're adding $40,000 a year of value to the property over the last 46 years. They also talk about the savings in the environment, fuel usage and such, because they're so close to it. They note that the old lease rate was $35 an acre. They say they're putting more into the land than they're taking from it. They were quite concerned about the idea that this was going up for public bid. They felt that they should be able to continue on with it. They said they would be willing to negotiate a higher price, but that they didn't feel the public should be allowed to bid on it. They did, however, submit a bid, and the bid was for $55 an acre rent for the years 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. 3/5 of that's paid to the town, 2/5 to the Municipality of Swan Valley West. They were the only bid that was received. So the town has indicated they're entering into an agreement with them as part of the Airport Commission. You're seeing before you a partially signed original document that's been signed by some people. We have that document here to proceed on with. I brought it forward to council tonight, probably just for information. I spoke to the town CAO on this. He does not feel that either council requires a resolution, because this is part of the Airport Commission operations, not council itself. But certainly it's here for discussion if anyone wants to discuss it. Questions, comments on this? So our intention is...
Who has, I know, I'm on the airport commission, but I'm still fuzzy on all this stuff. And I live at the end of the strip. Who owns the property?
So it is...
We own it, or does the town own it?
We technically own it entirely, but with a caveat on it. Originally it was jointly owned, the town has interest, but because of taxation, the entire property was transferred to us, but they hold a caveat that we can do nothing with it without their permission. So the 3/5, 2/5 is approximately what, if the ownership wasn't transferred all to us, is the shares.
So we actually own the property.
Technically we own it.
Swan Valley West.
Yes.
I thought so. I'm a little confused here.
Any other questions, comments on that? If not, what's going to happen is the CAO and I will be signing that agreement on behalf of the Airport Commission to bind us to it. 10.8 doctor reviews. This was an interesting one. This came forward from Councillor White from the town of Swan River. He does some work with medical services. I spoke a minute ago about doctors being in town. So they surveyed each of those doctors. They're not doctors yet, they're in training. They will be doctors soon. They asked them some questions. They asked them what would attract them to Swan River, what would keep them here, what would they like to see in Swan River, and if they were here, what reasons would cause them to leave, what things would make them go away. And then for general ideas of what they thought new doctors would want, if we should be recruiting other people, and if we should be looking at different equipment. So tonight I included this. It is in the public part of the agenda, so anyone watching along with us is welcome to grab the agenda link and go take a read of it. It's quite eye-opening from outsiders looking into our valley and the things they think they would want here. What struck out to me is many of them indicating that scheduled air service would be something important to them, because their family obviously wouldn't be here, and if there was a plane they could hop on to go for a weekend, they'd be quite happy. But without the plane, many of them indicated they would not be interested in the Swan Valley, which may not be the first thing we always think of, but certainly for them, that's what's important to them. A little touched on the equipment there as well, and the CT scanner was mentioned obviously, but also some other things. So that's mostly for information, unless there's anyone that wishes to discuss it further. 10.9, Swan Valley Snowmobile request. So this is a request we received from them for us to do one of those agreements with the Community Foundation. I've spoken to the Community Foundation. While the law was changed last year to allow them to fund non-qualified donees directly, which allows us to do this legally, they're not yet caught up to that in the foundation. They're still waiting for some guidance from CRA because the law has changed, but there isn't a guidance document on how to properly follow the law. And we certainly reviewed that draft of it and are going to follow the draft for now. They don't yet feel comfortable following the draft. So they're for one more year wanting to do these funding agreements. So the agreement has been brought forward for us to say we're in partnership with them to allow them to apply for funding for the Swan Valley Snowmobile Association. If it was received, it would be given to us, we would then give it to them. So I can't say we know much about their application other than that they're doing a shop, they're doing some stuff. I didn't go through the dollars and cents with them at all, but this is something fairly typical we do. So there's going to be a resolution if we're fine results. Resolve that the council approve the partnership request from the Swan Valley Snowmobile Association as attached. So I have a resolution here, be it resolved that the council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West approve the partnership request from the Swan Valley Snowmobile Association as attached. Is there someone who would like to move that? Councillor Blosha, a seconder please. Councillor Neely, any discussion on that resolution? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favour? That is carried. We move to 11.1, which is not often we have an 11.1, but try new things, I thought. So you'll see, I think on your thing, you might see something that says show notes.
Shared notes.
Shared notes.
Yeah.
So that is the information I'm about to read, so you actually have it written down and don't have to scribble it all down. So union negotiations are coming up. We've set dates with the union to negotiate with them for a contract. The contract has been expired for a little over a year, so we'll be negotiating for last year, this year, and then my understanding is probably is a 3-year term. So next year will be the final agreement of that, or final year of the agreement. So the dates that are set on March 7th at 5 p.m. the union will be here. Garrett is coming up in person. He will present to our Labor Relations Committee that evening at 5 their proposal. They have agreed to make a proposal to us. We did go through for about an hour or so with the union, the Labor Relations Committee, thoughts from both sides about the proposal and discussed a few things just that we'd like to see changed. We'd like to see them make some movement on. So they'll make a presentation to the committee. They asked to present to committee, not to the whole council, because they find it a little unruly to go to a whole council. The thought is we would then hold a special council meeting that evening at 7. And that date, the time could be subject to change, but the committee would bring forward the proposal to the entire council so they could review it.
Who's on that committee?
Myself, Councillor Kushniryk, and Councillor Neely.
I think I always get mixed up, human resources.
I thought you, like you said, you had said that, but you weren't at that meeting?
He was away.
That
Oh,
was me.
Yeah,
okay.
he should have been.
I
He
just
was away. Yeah.
Pretty sure of that.
Once council meets to consider it, obviously we would have a discussion of all of council on what we want to see there. From the time we're done that meeting until March 9th, they will be in town for us to continue negotiations. We've committed that we will make our best effort from both sides to wrap it up while they're in town in person. So they'll be staying in hotels here, and we will be making ourselves available as the union committee. And certainly there'll be communication with council. I don't know that we'll have another special meeting, but we might get together, we'll do something. But then the plan would be on the 9th of March at 7 p.m. to hold a special meeting where council would assemble and presumably be approving whatever the proposal will be. We will approve it first, say that we're willing to accept that offer. They would then take it to the union membership for a vote. If they voted in favor, it would be a done deal. If they voted it down, we would then have to go back to negotiations. So if you can know the dates, and obviously you can join by phone if you're not here or whatever's happening,
But
but that's
just the
when it's
date for the
happening.
rest of us is really
The
more-
7th and the 9th
Oh, the
are
7th.
going to be the important
The
ones.
9th is Thursday, I believe, eh?
Yeah, the 9th will be a Thursday night, and hopefully that night we'll be finishing it off and approving it. But the 7th is when we get to see it and get our input on it and then negotiate for a while.
Oh, yeah, the 7th at 7 p.m.
Yeah,
and the
that's-
9th at 7 p.m.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And if for any reason somebody can't be here, we'll get you in, we'll get
Yeah.
copies of it to you, because we want everybody to be as
Yeah.
involved as they
Labor
can.
Relations Committee at 5, I think. Right?
Yes, the committee will be at 5 that day. And then the
Yeah.
committee will be back and forth with whatever, but the two council meetings will schedule a special meeting so we can give the notice and have it be official. That does it for 11.1. We will move to 12, committee reports and communications. Let us start with, let's go with Councillor McGregor this time around.
Just the library board meeting, really short meeting, actually. But, there was some talk about the pavement at the back of the Benito Library. It's not completed or something needs to be done there. Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Continue with your report, I'll have comments after.
Okay, alright. And, that's pretty much it. And there was just some talk of the minimum wage increase coming up, and they weren't quite sure how to go about implementing it because they'd have to change it for each. There's quite a process with their, it sounds like out-of-date QuickBooks. So they tabled that, and we're gonna come back to it and see if they could talk to someone at the town on how to fix that. So that was pretty much it. There was I'll just pass it along because there's a tree of lights display that they do for Christmas.
That was here.
And they were also, the other thing I'd like to add is they were, there's Kirk still working with the insurance, obviously, on the repairs to do. And the other thing was the security system. They've had quite a few incidents in there, as you can well imagine. So they've been working on that and upgrading that, so it's safer for everyone in there and the employees as well. So.
Anything else? On the pavement front, it's certainly been a discussion for a while.
What's that?
The pavement front has been a discussion for a while. There's certainly been probably some heated debate over time on that, of whether or not it's appropriate to pave the back alley. But the library side of it is that if they did that, it would track less dirt into the library. So they proposed paving the back so that the vehicles that park, they get out of the vehicle on pavement and walk in and keep cleaning.
And if I remember correctly, it was also wheelchair accessible at the back more than the front now. So that was another thing that was in their favor for that. I think the only opposition on that might have been,
Wasn't there something?
no, it was the neighbor that was opposed
I
to
thought there
it.
was something with the funding as well.
I don't think
When it first
anything to
came
do,
up, there was
honestly, I
something-
don't think it was anything to do with the funding. I think it was the opposition of,
And then maybe the result, like, so originally there was some question about a donation being used for it, whether it could be or couldn't be, but I think maybe they've moved past that and
yeah,
gone into a different.
I know what you're thinking, but no, it wasn't that, it was,
So good luck to you. It's good you're on that committee.
it's good.
Make us proud.
Okay.
Councillor Neely.
The only thing with the G7, or G7, I'm gonna split the difference, G6. That's the only thing that I've been doing. I mean, four of us were there, so I'm sure one of you has a good report on that. Our Reeve was up at the mic, I think, 3 times, made some good presentations.
Got called some names too, it was great. Anything further, Councillor Neely?
No, that's it.
Councillor Burick.
Oh, I attended the G8 meeting in Chester, yeah.
One of them.
And
I don't know what it is.
my feeling from the meeting was very positive, very informative, and like our Reeve made an excellent presentation on economic development. It was well accepted by the crowd, and my feeling was a very good cooperative atmosphere from all the 4 municipalities. Everybody wants to work together. They want to do their darndest to work together and, agree on things together and want to promote the valley. gotta make it work. I was just a little bit disappointed that the crime thing wasn't discussed a little bit more, but like I said, there was the GIS unit discussion and the 3 officers coming in at a cost of 600,000. I mean, that would be discussed later, I guess, but yeah, it was a good meeting, very good. And like I say, my feeling was that it was very cooperative. Like people really felt good about it. Even Mountain, Minnetonka's, Bozeman, Town of Swan River and ourselves, it was good. So that's the only one I attended.
Councillor Blosha.
I didn't have any, extra meetings, thanks.
Councillor Kushniryk.
Well, I was at the Mystery G meeting.
Say 7.
Same thing, it was my first time. It was actually a fairly interesting meeting with very good cooperation amongst everybody. I was at the union meeting as well. I guess we kind of touched on that a bit, and the fire shared service, municipal service, whatever they call it, which we've also gone over already.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
So I'll speak to the G8, G4 confusion first. There's 2 meetings held that evening. The first was a G8 meeting, the second was a G4 meeting. The town felt that not all business to be discussed that evening should be discussed in front of all partners. So they had invited 8 different partners for the first part of the meeting, obviously the 4 municipalities, the school division, and 3 other groups. Unfortunately, the other 3 weren't able to attend. So the school division did attend. When the G8 wrapped up and we were about to begin the G4, the school division said, well, why wouldn't we stay? Like, don't you understand what working together is? Maybe it's time to try it. So they stayed. So it carried on as a G8 meeting, even though there was also a G4 meeting. And we discussed the second set of stuff with the school division as well, which after the meeting they said they found quite informative. And they prefer to always be involved because then they don't have to wonder what we're up to on some things, and they indicate that some of those things we're talking about, they have roles to help with too. So they're kind of hoping that we would do away with the G8, G4 and just simply be the G8 and stay that way, because there's not a lot of things that wouldn't be suitable for everyone. We did discuss economic development at the meeting. Our council has already committed 2 representatives to the RISE board. The town of Swan River has committed 2 representatives to the RISE board. It was agreed at the meeting that the other 2 municipalities would each be appointing members. Once those appointments are done, there will be a RISE board meeting. RISE has $160,000 in the bank right now, so there's no funding request for this year. It was discussed to not hire an economic development officer, but instead to have the committee of RISE, which is the councils, look at some targeted economic development plans, small projects like the doctor's brochure we saw tonight, where we're going to spend a few $100s here and there and get some results and then grow from there. So that will be moving forward once those are appointed. It's important to note that there still is that community committee out and about that was formed for RISE, and they haven't yet been able to report back. The report was due already and it's late. But they will report back and they will continue on with their work. So they will report back to that committee and obviously the councils as well with what their thoughts were for economic development and what they think would be appropriate. And we'll see what they come back with if we'll investigate some more. But it was kind of the feeling of the group that there are some things we should do now already rather than waiting months for a report to come out and letting 2023 slip away, where we could accomplish some things now and get something done instead of just letting the money sit in the bank. So the doctor's brochure is one of them, and there's a document that Councillor Blosha probably doesn't have a copy of yet. I can circulate it to her, that was presented at the G8 meeting of just some ideas, $500 for this, let's put $1,000 into that, let's do some things. So that was good. The meeting itself was a lot better than other meetings I've attended in that format. Typically people are very closed and close to their chest with information. It didn't feel that way. I know some councillors from some of the municipalities indicated that they had stopped coming to the meetings because they felt they were a waste of taxpayers' money to go have supper out and accomplish nothing. And they said that their mind had been changed, and if meetings were to stay that way, they would come and they would be encouraging their entire council to be there instead of just 1 or 2 of them. And the big difference was, I think, everyone was willing to be a lot more open about the issues we were discussing. And not just with what the asks were, what the presenter was saying, but all councils were getting down into the trenches and sharing their real views on things. So if there was concerns coming up about an item, rather than saying, well, that's nice, and after the meeting say, oh, well, we don't like that, it was being said at the meeting, and there was some stuff coming out there of what the actual concerns are, so we could all understand and try to build those bridges and resolve those concerns, which was really, really nice to see. On that front, we are the next host for G8.
Yep.
So we'll be setting a
What's the
date for
date?
that.
Oh.
Not set yet, but
Is
we'll
it 3
survey.
months, 3 months
3
or 4
months.
months?
3 months. I've heard them referred to as the June G8, but that wouldn't be 3 months, so we'll figure out what dating and that might be June's trying to avoid seating or something. We'll find out what the plan is.
Yeah, I think you're right, because
Yeah.
they did never do
I
it
think
in May.
yeah, we don't do May just because. So we'll have to figure out where we're going to host that, obviously. We'll host it someplace in Swan Valley West. Probably not the Kendall Hall.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest that to keep it
Maybe a
short.
new one.
Yeah, it would be short. if it
Maybe
was just the
Thunder
Kendall
Hill.
Hall. It may be possible. So
We've done it before,
yeah,
so
Well, there-
we've used Thunder Hill before.
the new facility would certainly be the size
That
for
would
it.
be nice to show off.
So we'll figure out something on that. That's probably all I have to share from the G8. Certainly I've been continuing on with about a million other little details here and there. But you know, I just remind you all, you're always welcome to pick up the phone, call me, email me, anything. Be glad to talk to you. And some of you call me 6 and 8 times a day, and others of you don't. I appreciate even the 6 to 8 phone calls a day.
I hear enough of your voice, a text is good.
So it's been a good 3 weeks since we last met. There's some stuff we need to discuss in camera, obviously, that I can't share here, but it's been good. I also want to just say for a moment, we've been watching the viewership on YouTube increasing. More and more people watching the meetings, more and more people paying attention. Even today we had people making comments about what's on the agenda and some of the supporting documents. It thrills me to see people wanting to be involved in what we're doing here and knowing more of what's going on, so it's a good thing.
Good.
Did you have any reports you wanted to share? Not so much?
No.
Okay. I think most of what the CA has shared is likely going to the in-camera session. We decided a while back that we're not going to do a resolution for this anymore because it doesn't seem like there's any reason for it. The only other thing, and it's not on the agenda, but tonight we have Meredith on the phone directly because the conference calling we've been doing hangs up if there's only 2 people on it. So lately it's only been Meredith calling in and she's been getting disconnected. So we waited until 7 o'clock tonight to see if anyone else called. Nobody else had, so we just called Meredith directly. We should determine at some point what the future of offering the conference calling is. I don't know if it's necessary anymore. The gallery's open. And certainly, you know, if we only have one person wanting to use it, we can do what we've done tonight, where we can just call them directly. We should put some thought into that. So we're not advertising something we're not doing. So obviously somebody tried to call in at 5 after 7 tonight, they weren't able to get into
And
the
that
meeting.
happens quite often.
Yeah.
So
So-
sometimes even 7:30.
We'll need to decide if we wish to keep doing it or not, or what we do. So put your thinking hats on to that. Is there anything else before we go to the in-camera session? We'll take a break, we'll come back and go in camera. Seeing nothing, we will call a recess of 10 minutes or until everybody returns.
Whichever happens first.
Okay, 13.3, resolutions arising from in-camera. Just before we get to that, we have heard from the mayor of the town of Swan River, who indicates that they had a great discussion tonight. They like the agreement, but there's a couple small things they'd like to discuss. And they were able to obtain earlier an extension to the deadline for the purchase of the new fire truck. So we are not in a position where we have to make a decision tonight. So I think we'll just leave that tabled. And we'll come back to it, we'll have some discussion with them, and we'll likely see it in a couple of weeks' time.
What is their extension date, did they say?
He has not said the date, but I asked him, I said specifically, does this have to be decided now, because we don't want to mess that up? And he said they have an extension, they're good for at least a week or 2. So, we'll be mindful of that, but we will carry on without making a decision tonight, because obviously we'd be making a decision on the agreement, might have some fine points changed. So we'll come back on that. 13.3.1. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West eliminate the position of Thunder West Fire Chief. Is there someone who would like to move that resolution? Moved by Councillor Burick, seconded by Councillor McGregor. Any discussion on the resolution?
Can I have a recorded vote, please?
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am, I should say. Recorded votes requested. Any other discussion? Hearing none, give me a moment to get to the recorded vote, please. Here. So please keep your hands up for a while so I can get this recorded. Those in favor of the resolution. There, and there. Those opposed to the resolution. And we have one absent tonight, so I'll mark that as absent. And everybody else has voted, so I'm not asking for abstain. The resolution is carried.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
It's too late. Okay, Councillor Blosha, Councillor Reeve voted against it. I'd just like to know why.
You know, if they wanted to share, I'm sure they would have. There was
You don't
opportunity
have
for
to share, but,
discussion.
like, why did you vote against it? Like,
Personally,
yeah,
I don't think it's necessary to do that, okay?
so what do
It'll
you,
just go away by itself.
we're just limiting the
Okay.
position right now, though.
It'll go away by itself. People know that Thunder West is not there anymore. People know he's not the fire chief because there is no Thunder West Fire Department,
So why not just,
right? I mean, that's my,
so why not just say Carrie,
all he has to do now is say, the past fire chief. He could put the same thing or whatever and just put as a past fire chief of Thunder West. You know, instead of saying as the fire chief, he'd say as the past fire chief. It's not gonna make any difference, it's not gonna stop anything from happening or being written. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion.
it's just not clear on that one, though, but anyways, okay, Carrie.
No, that's the way I feel. I don't have to explain it.
You
That's the
don't
way I
have to explain
voted.
it, because if I'm asked why it was,
We're asked, council made a decision. The council decision was the resolution was carried. That's all that has to be said.
We're not always gonna be 100%, but 7 votes for everything. There's always gonna be 1 or 2 or 3 that are different than everybody else's.
That's a
That's
sign
the
of
way
a
I
healthy
feel.
council. It's a sign of a healthy council.
Well, I don't know healthy or what, but
If everybody just said, we'll just vote the same as everybody, so it's the same as everybody, would we really be forming opinions? We have to form opinions. We have to make a decision. And sometimes not everyone's gonna see the same.
it's not always popular.
14, I don't believe we have any notices of motion. Does anyone wish to present anything there? No. We're moving to 15 for adjournment.
This one we will be in favor, all of us, Brian, okay?
I thought Brian,
Well, that's the same opinion on this.
We resolve this meeting shall now adjourn at 11:03 p.m. Be it further resolved, the next meeting is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023 at 7 p.m. I'm not sure if anyone's willing to move that or not. Is there a secondary?
We did it before. You missed it. He wasn't pretending. He didn't
Any
see it.
discussion of the resolution? Yes.
No.
Isn't it over yet?
Those in favor?
That's fine.
That's carried. Awesome.